Hello and welcome back to the Honest Business Podcast. I hope you are very well, whatever point of your day and your week or your month you are joining me. Today we've got part 2 of the 30 trend predictions for the rest of 2023. I'm just going to dive straight in. If you haven't listened to the first bit, go back and listen to it. It'll be the previous episode. I give you some context around it. I'm not going to give you the full disclaimer now. So yeah, go and listen to that one, but I'm going to dive right into this and I hope you enjoy it, and I'll try and keep it as short and sweet as possible. So number 17 is around TikTok Shop and also kind of like online purchasing and ease of purchasing, because what we're talking about is one-click purchasing is going to continue to grow. So the idea of like Shopify, is it called Shopify Shop? What's it called? It's like a thing where you can save all your details, and it's basically like an Amazon type thing where you just click it once and it miraculously has all of your items and you don't have to type anything in, and then you have your card saved and you just press it and you buy it and it gets delivered to your door. That is going to continue to grow. TikTok Shop in the UK is going to continue to grow. I don't know if that's going to be licensed everywhere else. If it goes to America, I mean, can you imagine how huge it's going to be there? I imagine it's not going to be, given the issues that's going on with the app at the moment there. However, TikTok Shop will continue to grow because it's what they've managed to do really successfully at TikTok Shop is get everybody over the hump of not wanting to opt in, not wanting to do it, worrying about it, thinking it's a scam, having all sorts of issues. So this year for Q4, which I'm about to talk about anyway in the next point, that is going to be a massive, amazing opportunity because the issue and kind of the block to entry has been removed massively. And actually, I imagine part of their strategy, if they're very strategic, which I imagine they have been, last year they probably knew that was going to happen, and they knew that the point of last year was to get them over that hump so that this year they can really go with it. And I believe that it will massively blow up. But I think for you, if you're a small business listener, what I want to say to you is, yes, if you want to do TikTok Shop, great. But also, and I would recommend you do if you're a product-based business and you've got a lot of units to shift. The other thing to think about, though, is just your website in general. Is it optimized? How many clicks have they got to do? Can they just bang, 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 and I'm done and I'm buying it? Is there things that you can be looking at in your business to really make sure that it's so easy for people and it's a no-brainer? Number 18 is about Q4 sales, and I want to talk about this because I think it's exciting. So I believe, and you can, if I'm wrong, then that's okay. You can, you can say that I'm wrong. I think we're going to have a really buoyant and positive Q4 for a lot of businesses. Not everyone. It's very rare that everybody's going to have an amazing time. However, I think if you are a business related to some kind of Christmas, to gifting, to some way of having purchasing going on, and that doesn't mean you have to be a product-based business. I also mean, for example, my business, I make most of my sales for the year in terms of contracts and signing those. A lot of the time, it's in Q4. It's also one of my busiest times of year in terms of like delivery, also delivery of service. So I believe it's going to be buoyant. I think it's going to be good. I think, yes, there's all sorts going on in the world, and yes, there's issues, but I have a really good feeling about Q4. It's probably one of the most least kind of like data-driven points on here, which I know I've mentioned that, these are a mixture of data, research, opinion, experience, insight, but I have a good feeling. I think if you're putting a lot of work in now, if you're really getting yourself sorted and making sure that things are all planned out, I think you'll have a good time, especially if you're prepared to be agile and move with whatever change happens between sort of September time and then like October, November, December, because inevitably there's always kind of a shift that happens in September, which then means people have to sort of tweak and change up things. Number 19, relating somewhat to that, it's about Pinterest. I think Pinterest is really going to continue / come back big. I think it's going to take a bit of time. I think it might be sort of like next summer, but I think there's a real space for Pinterest to dominate again. And it's still huge, obviously, but I think there's just a lot of potential once they figure out the system a bit better, because the user interface became a bit bizarre, especially with some of the video features and things that they'd sort of tested and created. I think if they can sort that out a bit, I think there's so much opportunity there with Pinterest, and so much untapped kind of, when we talk about AI and we talk about, how do we differentiate from that and what's going to make things different? Yes, obviously, user generated AI is possible and imagery is possible through AI. But I think that's where a lot of authentic sort of human connection is going to occur. And I think it's a really interesting place to look at if you are a product-based business, or if you're a service-based business and you have a lot of storytelling and you have a lot of kind of interesting elements to what you do. I think this is a really cool, fun, exciting place to look at. Number 20, we're going to circle back to podcasts. So podcast, I believe people really want high value and specific, and that was why I was going to link back in the previous episode. I talked about how I think that sort of community focused podcast is going to really sort of thrive. But my flip side to that is that I do actually think people really want high value and specific, even if that's short. So I think I personally don't love a 5-minute podcast episode. I find it annoying. I'm like, where's the where's the meat? Where's the depth? Where's the this? And 1 minute is the intro, 1 minute's the outro. You get 3 minutes of content. It's like, oh, give me something else. So I think for me anyway, I think, it's all right if it's 15-20 minutes. I'm not saying it has to be like an hour long. Some people don't want to listen to an hour long, but I think people want something that's specific. They want something high value. They want something that's very clear and quite methodical and laid out. And that's why I do the podcast, and that's why I said in the previous episode that I'm not changing it. Not to say that I never will, but for right now, we will continue in how I deliver the podcast, because I believe that it's a really useful resource. I know you guys come and tell me, and thank you for coming and tell me, because I only know that if you tell me. So continue to share feedback, and I'm open to tweaks and changes and things. But yes, I think high value and specific episodes is really key versus just like rambles. Now, obviously, if you are an entertainment podcast versus an educational one, the rambles is great. That's what people want. They need something to switch off to. But if you are someone who is creating a podcast because you want it to help with your sort of funnel or leads, or you want to kind of create impact in the world, and you want to have that in your marketing strategy for your business, I do think this sort of high value, specific, really to the point thing is really important. Like, I know people love this podcast because of that. There's not really very much waffle. It's just like, this is what we're talking about. Let's go. It takes as long as it takes. Once we're done, great, you leave. And I know that some of you take a lot from that, and I appreciate, and I'm very grateful and honored that you utilize this. And hopefully, if you also have a business podcast, like, see this as an opportunity, right? I don't mind, like, do it. Like, I'm not bothered. You utilize this for what you need. But I have people who use this podcast as part of their CPD activity, and that means that it's really meaningful. So think about, if you're going to spend time on a podcast, I think you really need to understand, what is it you're doing. Are you doing the kind of educational side? Are you doing the community bit? Are you doing both together? Because they can definitely work together, but I think you need to be really clear on what it is and what it isn't. Number 21 is, there's going to be a real shift, and I'm sure I talked about this at the start of the year, and I have seen this happen this year, and I think it's definitely like moving, and it's going to grow even bigger. Is there's going to be a real focus on entrepreneurs actually making sure that their operations are actually in place and working, which, hallelujah, thank goodness. I mean, that's what we really need, right? But I think that's going to be a really nice and interesting space to see that people are prioritizing something like that. And we definitely have seen that move forward, but I just think it's going to continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. Linked with that, number 22, I think we're going to move away from all-in-one solutions and platforms. And I say this with a caveat, right? So all-in-one solutions and platforms, what I mean by that is trying to have something like a one-and-done system to run your business off is what we all want. And I will speak, right? I want one. I really do. But I want one that works, and I want one that's good, and I want one that actually delivers on what it says it's going to do. And the issue we've got is, in my opinion, I am yet to find one that will do that. If anyone who's wondering for context, specifically in the kind of coaching, advisory, consultant, mentorship, like space, I'm talking about client management, I'm talking about, or even course hosting, I'm talking about email marketing, like I'm talking about website, like these platforms all are great in sort of idea world. The execution is hard, and I get it, right? It's a bloody hard task. However, I do struggle because some of the money that we're paying these companies and how many of us are paying this money, it's challenging. So yeah, I'm talking about, the Kartra, the Dubsado, the Thrivecart, the all of these kind of one and done systems, which there's many. I've only listed sort of 3 there. We've got about 15, 20 that I could list off the top of my head, all that have amazing features, all that are super useful, but then also all of them have their moments where it all comes crashing down. The issue also is that they tend to be fine and then they break, something breaks, and then the whole thing breaks for lots of things sort of domino, and it becomes quite tricky. So yeah, I think there's a move away from that, and I think there's much more of a movement to using things like Zapier and other integration software where it can talk to each other, and instead using multiple different items. So you might have sort of 3 or 4 systems in place in actual programs that you're using versus having one thing, but you feel more confident in the fact that it's going to work. Again, issues with that still, because yeah, we're not going to dive into that, but I would argue there's no solid thing yet. And I know there's a lot of colleagues who are in the industry that I'm in and are trying hard to create something that is. And so that's very exciting. And I hope that, that really continues to grow in terms of reliability, because it is frustrating and we do want a one. We want it that works well versus something that doesn't, and therefore the kind of issue that's happening at the moment is that people are moving away because it feels unreliable. Number 23 is around scaling back growth plans. So I think for the rest of this year and potentially going into 2024, we're going to see a scaling back of growth plans in order to fulfill the goals. I think people are really wanting to look at their lives and reevaluate their lives and think, what do I want? What do I need? Do I need to grow the business to 10 million a year, or actually is it all right at 1? Do I need to make 150 grand a year, or actually am I happy making like 80 grand a year and being really lean and having really high profit? I think people are starting to really look at what is a vanity metric, what isn't. What is a metric of I want to prove something to myself versus it's going to give me the happiness that I think it's going to. And that's a beautiful adventure to go on. It's something I've been exploring a lot with clients this year. And I think, again, it's definitely a byproduct of COVID and us coming out of that space and being able to spend time doing the things we like. But I also think it's just a different kind of people of having their eyes opened and realizing that like life is bloody short, and we don't necessarily want to spend all the time in the world working, and we don't want to spend the time building something necessarily. Not everybody. I think if you're on the path of you do, and you're like, no, I'm going, and like you're more ambitious than ever and you're more hungry for it than ever, great, do it, go for it. And I will be there to push you and support you, because I love supporting people like that. But I also think it's okay if you feel as though you're like, I don't think it feels aligned anymore to push at the speed I've been pushing for the last 2, 3, or 4 years. Maybe you're now like, I think I need to just enjoy what I've built a bit. And you can always come back to it, which I think is the thing that people sort of get themselves a bit tangled in. They feel like once they make a decision, that's it, it's a commitment, and that's like one and done. Whereas I'm always trying to suggest that actually, it's okay, and that we can, things can move, and you can take 6 months to just enjoy. You can take 24 months to just enjoy. Doesn't mean you can't then put the foot, put your pedal down and, what is that saying? Put the gas on? Oh, goodness. I can't work out what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? Like, put your foot on the gas. That's it. Those of you who listen just don't know, I'm severely dyslexic. I say the wrong thing all the time. I've probably said the wrong thing in this episode numerous times. And another classic thing I do is sayings. I always get them mixed up and I say the wrong thing. Yeah, if you want to then decide 2 years down the line that now is the time to scale and maybe things have changed in your life, like you can do that. You're not prescribing and contractually committing to do an X, Y, and Z thing just by saying that you want to scale back growth plans. And I think we're going to see a lot of that over the next 6 months and beyond. Number 24 is linked to this. So I think we're going to really shift in terms of what we value in business success. So it's going to shift from value and revenue to value and profit, and really looking at people are going to start looking at how much money can I take out of the business, and start planning their growth and planning their activity and planning their workload around what am I actually taking out. And that's something I talk about all the time. Like, all the time, that's where I start with people. It's how I do all of my work, is around that. However, most people, it isn't. And a lot of people don't think about that. They're focused on, what is the revenue thing? What's going to sound cool? How much investment do I want to get? What do I want to be able to say to people? Oh, I've built this X business. Because the reality of it is you can build the £2 million a year business and you might only be taking 100 grand out if you're lucky. For some people, they build, £100 million business, and it's the most miserable existence of their life for 10 years, but then they sell and they have a great time. Everything's cool. You choose what you want. There's no right or wrong. But I just think it's about you, and I think people are now understanding that actually I've got to make a decision, because your decision making based on what you're going after massively changes depending on whether you're going after profit, size, scale, growth. Are you trying to sustain what you've done? Are you trying to double it? Like, that all needs to be really considered and talked about. There's an episode I did somewhat recently, around focusing on profit. Should you focus on profit or revenue? I'd really suggest you listen to that if that point kind of triggers something for you, because I kind of go into more detail there about when you should focus on which thing and what does that look like. Number 25, let's talk about hiring. So I am sorry to say, for anyone listening who is like, please tell me something good about hiring, because it's really tricky at the minute. Sadly, I think the hiring and the retention issue is still going to be an issue, and I think it might actually get worse. However, please don't panic. Please don't think, this is it, I need to pack it in, because I know some people are really struggling with this issue of, what do we do with hiring? So I think where the issue is coming at is that employees are going to continue to have control. Do I believe that there's going to be a cap where at some point businesses are just going to have to turn around and say, I can't facilitate what you're asking for? Yeah, and I think it's really going to come soon. I think it probably is going to come at the back end of this year, where there has to be a flip. But I think we're still going to have a period of it getting a bit worse before that actually happens, and before there's any kind of reset or stabilization period, which is kind of tricky. It's hard. It's difficult if you're in the space of I need team. However, there's lots of things we can do. Maybe I will do an episode on it, because right now is not the time for us to start going into strategy around hiring and retention. But what I would say is, if you have got some really amazing people in your business, keep hold of them. Work out what you can do to help them. Work out what you can do to nurture them. What is it that they want? Are they happy? Are they not? Have these difficult conversations, because it's going to save you a hell of a lot more money, time, stress, and upset if you can. And then from your hiring perspective, you really need to look at, who do you want in a role? The more specific you get on that, the easier it's going to be for the right person to find you, because what's happening a lot at the moment is jobs are going really vague, and people are like, well, I don't know. And then the whole money conversation comes up of well, the money thing's the only thing that's pulling people. Well, I'd argue that isn't the case. It is a huge factor. It isn't the case if the job's specific enough, and if it's clear enough and tailored enough for someone to read something and say, yes, that's me, I fit in that, and that is what I want to spend my time doing. And you've got to get that, it's a real fine line, but I think it's worth investigating, and I think it's worth you trying to get a handle on, because it will really help. Number 26 is a shift away from unlimited holiday. Now, don't shoot me, I know this is super popular. I think this is probably going to be more of a 2024/2025 prediction. However, I think we're going to see this change in, what is the point in unlimited holiday? Are people actually taking it? Is it helping people, or are people taking less holiday than they have done? And I think what's going to be more changed is a shift into really generous X amount of days holiday. So 31 days, 40 days, something that is extremely generous compared to what was previously offered, but then does have a quota to it. And I think that is what's going to kind of move to. I also think culture-based reward is going to have a moment and is going to come up, and this idea of employees deciding what their benefits are. which smaller startups are doing, and it's working really well. And it can be really powerful. Like, it doesn't have to be expensive. It can be cheaper than what you're actually paying at the minute, and can be so much more impactful of what people actually want and what they will find really useful in their lives. And there's going to be a real connection point between well-being and that. I've got some clients who are doing some really good stuff around what can we offer people that actually people want to do, that they maybe wouldn't buy themselves, that actually is really useful. And we've kind of created systems and implementing that, and it has been really cool to see that play out and what can happen. So I think there's a lot to look at in terms of benefit structures for employees and what people actually want. Also, there's a whole point on sort of hybrid working, but I'm not going to go into that necessarily, because I feel like that's a whole other ball game. Number 27. Hope you're still with us and following along. Internal / behind the scenes recruitment is going to rise. And what I mean by that is that the best jobs are not going to be advertised. And the jobs where it's really exciting, it's likely that they're just going to be sort of quietly found. Now, this happens all the time anyway. This is not a new thing. It's been going on for generations and centuries, and it probably will do forevermore. And I get that this is a contradiction between me saying that hiring's going to become more of an issue. But I think what I'm trying to suggest here is that if you are senior leadership, or if you're C-suite, or if you are someone who is really looking at, it doesn't have to be C-suite actually, it can be your network. It essentially comes down to your network, right? What I'm trying to say is get your network really strong. You need to put time into getting your network really strong, because it's about who do you know. And there is so much of the job market that is given to just so-and-so knows so-and-so, and therefore they should come and work with you. And what I mean from a business perspective, because I know you're sat there thinking, well, I don't want to go and get a job, mate, so what's the point in this? You as a business owner can then utilize this. Now, I'm also not saying this is good, because I'd argue that this isn't great for society, personally, but that depends on your view. I think there's a lot of issues with doing this kind of behind the scenes recruitment. I think you get some really mixed up situations. I think you get a very limited skill pool sometimes. And I think you get really kind of blindsided as to what you could have access to. However, I know sometimes people are in certain situations where they're like, I just need someone to fill a role. And so if from a business perspective, you operating on your own and only kind of being in your little world and being scared to communicate with anybody in your industry and competitors and people who do similar things to you is likely not really helping you, because it might be that you can form some really strong relationships with people that actually make this whole thing a lot easier in terms of recruitment and in terms of actually finding key players in your business who can stay with you and who are really aligned with what it is that you're trying to do. Number 28 is a bit of a sales one, and that is around people wanting to know who they're buying off. So this idea of people having a relationship with the person that they're purchasing from is massive, and it's going to continue to get bigger and bigger and bigger. I think people love behind the scenes content, they love lifestyle content, they love understanding somebody as a whole thing. We do this I'd argue quite well in the business, not to blow my own trumpet, but we do this quite well in the business, and it works massively well for me and what I do. But it doesn't have to be that you have to do what I do, not at all. And there's definitely ways that we could do it 10 times better. But I think it's actually, regardless of what business you're in, it doesn't matter necessarily the industry. It's about how do you provide personal touch points. And the biggest thing for this is, right, when you go back to like know, like, and trust factor, my argument around the kind of lifestyle content piece is actually the trust bit. It's the trust factor that it really instills. Yes, people say, oh, well, it gets people to like you. I mean, yeah, okay, fine. But I cannot like someone, but I can trust them. And I think, I can do that and buy off them. The trust piece is the piece in 2023 and beyond that is going to be one of the biggest kind of levers in how do you leverage over other people and actually make sure that you make a sale. And so for me, I really believe that that's going to grow. People are hungry for that, and they're going to continue to be so, and they're going to continue to want to dive into and understand who it is that they're working with. It's also why I believe that if you're doing a really good job in your work, people will stick around. I believe that people, once they find someone that they really connect with, if it lends itself to what you do for a longer term relationship, I believe people want that. They don't want to go out searching for someone new. They don't want to go and build another relationship. They don't want to have to explain everything to this other person again. Like, a lot of people feel a lot of comfort and will really sort of be loyal and stay with you. So I think it's worthwhile investing the time into that. Number 29 is around LinkedIn. LinkedIn, I believe, is going to continue to thrive for B2B business. So if you're not on LinkedIn, I'd suggest you are. Again, you might be like, you're such a contradiction. Because I have a profile on there. We have a lovely amount of people who are following me, and it is not a huge part of our day-to-day strategy. However, it is on the list and has been for many a time. I'm sure we've discussed this before on the podcast. I've had some things this year which have really meant that some of our timelines have had to be shifted, which is quite frustrating. And LinkedIn is on there because I'm really looking forward to getting on that platform and to hanging out with people over there and spending more time there. But I do advise a lot of people on LinkedIn in the sense of for their business and their strategy and how that looks. And we have clients who really utilize LinkedIn very well, and that provides them with a lot of success from a business perspective. However, what I want to make clear on that is, yes, I think it's going to continue to thrive. Yes, I think there's space for lots of people on there, but I also think that it is really a place for people who aren't necessarily trading B2B to also have a great time. There is so many opportunities for you if you are direct to consumer, if you are someone who's doing charity based stuff. Get on LinkedIn. Like, I argue there's pretty much everybody. Even if you think nobody's going to get what you're selling on LinkedIn, I think you're wrong. And I think you can find ways of people absolutely loving it. I actually think the more abstract and bizarre it is, the more people want to follow you and the more people are interested in the content because it's so jarring from the other stuff they're seeing. So I'd really, really suggest, like, if you've been tinkering on this and you're like, I really think I need to jump in and I haven't, I'd highly suggest you do. I do think, though, you need to be strategic, and I think it does need to have there's a way of doing it that is different from some of the other platforms. Can you repurpose content? 1,000,000%. Yes, do it. I'm just suggesting that there is a kind of alternative way to it. And like any platform, I'd really recommend, if you're going to start getting on there and you're a bit unsure about what to do, go and be a consumer for ages and ages and ages. You don't have to be ages and ages and ages. Like, if you need to take action, take action. But there's nothing wrong with you sitting and consuming and understanding how this works and how the platform works and how, what do you like and what don't you like, and how do you like how so and so shows up but you don't like how X person shows up. Really, really think about what do you want it to be and where does it sit in your marketing strategy. The issue I find with people with LinkedIn is, like, they just add it in. It's like a silo, and they're just like, oh well, we'll just add it in and then it's all really going to work out. And it's like, well, is it though? Like, where specifically is that going to fit? How does that link to your message? How does it link to what you're trying to do in your business? How does it link to your impact goals? That's what you need to look at, I think, with really understanding why you're going to start doing this. Finally, the final point, number 30, is, we've tried to really rattle through these, haven't we? And I shouldn't finish on this because it's a bit depressing, but I wanted to talk about it because it's a really important point, and it's really important that we don't hide from these conversations and that we really talk about them. So I think women are going to have to continue to work twice as hard. And sadly, if you have an intersection of that, if you look at intersectionality in terms of being a Black woman or a disabled woman, or a trans woman, that potentially is even more. I say potentially, it is more. I don't think we're making lots of progress at the moment in terms of gender equality, in terms of business and investment and workplace. And I'm sorry to say it, I'm struggling to find the evidence that would suggest that we are making this amazing progress that we hope. And I fear that we're moving backwards a little bit. Now, I'm not saying that to be miserable. I'm not saying it to panic anyone. The reality of your day-to-day might be that you see absolutely zero difference, or you might be like, mate, it's getting so much better for me. I'm in this industry that used to be really difficult and now people are actually listening. If that's the case, please come and tell me, because I love hearing those stories and I'm really pleased. But I can't help but do an episode and have to share that I do feel like there's kind of this difficult feeling going on where it's not massively progressive and we're not hugely making strides forwards. I think as individual small businesses, people are doing tremendous jobs and are really trying hard. But I think in terms of like everything else and the wider world and the bigger organizations, I think there's a lot of box ticking going on. I think it's a lot of like, oh well, we've sorted that, and yeah, fine. There's not very much strategic thinking going on with it, or it's too strategic in the sense of it's just literally a we don't really care, but we'll sort it because it makes it look better, or for this report or this figure. So, yeah, I don't want to leave on a negative per se, but I want to say to you that if you are flying the flag and if you are doing really meaningful work and you know, are helping to progress gender equality and to progress all the other intersectionalities that's so important, keep going, because we need to keep moving forward with it and we need to stay focused. And I know that sometimes that's really tricky, but it's worthwhile and we will get there eventually. I believe, I hope, I pray. I'm not religious, but you know, I can I'll manifest, I don't know, whatever other people do. We have to make progress, and we have made a lot of progress from where we've been, but I definitely have sensed in 2023 there is a real lack of meaningful progression for women in business, women with a startup, women trying to raise investment, women getting a seat at the table at C-suite that isn't a non-exec director role. Like it's been hard. It's hard for people, and it needs to change, and it needs to stop, and people need to have the opportunities that they deserve. So those are my 30 trend predictions for the rest of 2023. We will see if I'm right. I could be completely wrong. I'm normally quite right, but who knows? I feel like this year is really weird, and as I mentioned in the first episode, I don't feel like there are a lot of trends really. Like, I've described a lot of things to you, but they're not necessarily like solid trends, and I think that's really interesting. It'll be good for us at the end of the year. I'm excited to record that episode for 2024 predictions, because I'll be intrigued to see if we have sort of, if there's been a big shift in that time, because there might be. But for now, I will love you and I will leave you and I will let you get on with your day. I hope you have a fantastic day. Come and find me on Instagram if you want to chat. If you have enjoyed this episode, share it on your stories or share it on LinkedIn or share it wherever you are and tag me. But yeah, I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye.